Really grateful to Rob for being here today. Rob is a fellow alum of Harvard Law School. He's the former general counsel and chief ethics officer of Airbnb and was one of the very first corporate leaders that we connected with at the Purple Campaign when we launched over 3 years ago now. And we learned about the work that Rob was doing at Airbnb, in particular, his Integrity Belongs Here program, which he's going to talk more about. I had the great opportunity, thanks to Rob, to sit in on that program in Airbnb's headquarters in San Francisco and learned a lot from him about how organizations can be better about addressing integrity and training people well on those issues and their values. So Rob, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us. Rob, after leaving Airbnb, wrote a wonderful book, which I have here with me, Intentional Integrity, which you all received a copy of, an ebook copy of with your registration for this workshop. And after reading this book, I can say with some confidence that I think Rob could probably lead this entire workshop. But I asked him to help me open this session with transparency because I think we share a view that transparency is really fundamental to integrity. So Rob, could you share with us a little bit more about some of how you helped Airbnb create really clear, transparent policies and communicate those well, and how other companies can also do the same?
Ali, thanks for that nice introduction. I appreciate it. Well, at Airbnb, about 4 or 5 years ago when I was the general counsel, it really struck me that the world was changing, that leaders were being held accountable in ways that we had not seen before. And I think Me Too was part of that, but by no means all of it. We saw things happening with Uber just right down the street. And it really struck us that in this changing world, companies that didn't think about integrity with some level of intentionality could easily be overwhelmed by problems. Leaders, entire brands could be negatively impacted. So we really thought about how we could drive integrity into the culture of the company. I think too often companies don't talk about integrity. It's unspoken, or it might be a pretty poster on the wall, with a lake and the trees and the word integrity underneath. But nobody ever talks about what it means. And I think that was, for us, an aha and a recognition that if we wanted to have a culture of integrity, we were going to have a conversation about it, and it was going to have to be led by leaders of the company. Because as I learned from Dan Ariely out at Duke University, who studies dishonesty as a science, silence is the enemy of integrity, and so is ambiguity. If you want to make it part of your company, you're going to have to be intentional about that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we've talked about is, that means not just having clear policies, but also communicating them well throughout the company. And I think your Integrity Belongs Here program was a great example of how to do that. Maybe you can share a little bit more about that program.
Yeah, well, what a lot of companies do is, you've got a code of ethics, right? But the code of ethics usually comes from a law firm, or it's something that you copy and paste from some other company online, and you put your own company's name up top, right? And then you send out an email to everybody that says, read this and certify, check this box saying you've read it, right? And of course, nobody reads it. I know because I've polled people, I've done polls about this. Most of the time people don't read it, they just check the box. And they know what's going on. They know what the drill is. The drill is this is a compliance exercise. The company's got to get 100% of the boxes checked, that everybody's read it, so that if something goes wrong, we can say, aha, we got you. You said you read this policy, and so now we can get you. That might serve a compliance purpose, but it doesn't win people's hearts. And what you want to do really is you want to win people's hearts. You want them to understand that integrity is important to your company, not just compliance. And if you want integrity to matter, well, you're going to have to do something differently. You're going to actually have to lead a conversation. I mean, you got to start by actually having your own code of ethics. We actually did our own code of ethics. We did a cross-functional, very diverse group inside the company, not just lawyers and HR folks, because, look, I have a particular bias. We're all biased. I have life experiences. I've got a particular background and the like. How I view ethics and integrity might be very different than someone who has a different background than I do. And it can't all be what Rob thinks. So we put together a diverse group and came up with a code of ethics that we really felt reflected our company, our language, our values. And then we didn't just send it out by email, although we did use the checkbox in the email for a more compliance perspective. We actually taught it. So if you're a new employee at Airbnb, you actually have an integrity class that talks about the code of ethics with real specificity on issues that could typically come up during an employee's time, using real examples of things that did happen. And this class, people were originally, they didn't want me to do the class. They said, "Oh, Rob, we're going to give you an hour during our new employee orientation to talk about ethics. We're not trying to drive people away, Rob. This is to welcome." And I said, no, I actually think we can do this and have a little fun with it. And it turned out they do blind surveys. We have 25 classes as part of orientation. It is the #1 ranked class in orientation out of 25. It even beats the history of Airbnb, which is something, right? And what it taught us really is that people want this stuff. People want more than a paycheck. They want to actually work at a place they're proud of. And when you talk about values and you talk about integrity, and you do it with some level of specificity to help them understand what you're looking for, they actually want to understand this. And it resonates. I had people coming up to me after the class. Ali, I had several of them in tears, literally saying, "Rob, you have no idea what it means to me to work for a company that cares about this sort of thing. I've never heard any company talk about this sort of stuff." And to have a leader lead the class, which we would do every time, to have a leader standing up in front of the room, wow, that really sends a message.
Yeah, I can say from having sat in the back of the room, the particular training I sat in, there were probably 15 new hires and Rob was leading it himself. And unlike almost any other harassment related training I've ever seen, people were not on their phones or multitasking. Like the leader from the company is staring them down and they were all looking right at you, making eye contact and really listening and engaged in a way that was...
You're telling them stories about past employees that have lost their jobs. You're telling, real stories. And you're telling them stories about people whose careers have been derailed. And that gets their attention. When I stand in front of the room and say that every single person in this room is going to have an integrity moment sometime in the first 6 months, the question is going to be, are you ready for it? And I'm going to tell you the story of some people that weren't ready for it. That kind of gets folks' attention. It's not some abstract concept. Because you know what? We all think we have integrity, right? How many people on this call have integrity, right? We all think we've got integrity. And that's actually the danger. Because we all think, oh, I'm a good person. I got this. I don't have to worry about this. This doesn't apply to me. The truth is, integrity is a lot harder than that.